And our intent tonight is just to mostly I'm going to turn it over to staff to take us through some things that they would like to share with us as we consider the budget for 2021. And right now I would turn it over to our finance director, Patricia Sowell, for an overview of the general fund.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give a brief overview and then I will turn it over to some other staff once I get done. So this is a 2021 budget overview for the general fund. The order of presentation tonight, 11:17. We'll start with me. I will go over the overview and then I will go over the finance, human resources, and general governmental budgets. Then Judge Susan Zolan will go over the judicial budget. Corporate Counsel Patrice Kent will go over the legal budget. Fire Chief Tom Hubbard will do the fire budget, and then Police Chief Steve Shoemate will do the police budget. Tomorrow, the order will go Director Lisa Scott. She'll do the community development, abatement, and homeless response. Parks Director Stacy Barnum will do the parks budgets, and Public Works Director Rick Sanger will do the public works and utility budgets. The budget summary. So this is the budget for Fund 001, General Fund or Current Expense Fund. I will be showing you the percent of overall expenses by department. I'm going to just do a summary only for the impacts to beginning cash on the Armory fire. Stacy will present further detail once she has a chance to review the documents that we did get completed before this meeting. And then there's requested positions that I'm going to go over also as an overview. The first area that I want to discuss is the comparative budget summary. So this takes our sources of revenue by type from 2017 actuals, 17, 18, and 19 actuals, 2020 adopted, and then the 2021 budget and the variance between the 2020 adopted budget and the 2021 budget request. It breaks out the revenue into taxes, charges for services, license and permits, fines and forfeitures, grants, state and shared, and miscellaneous revenues. The variance for the overall revenues is an additional $763,562. Our largest two streams are the grants as well as the taxes. Of course, the taxes are our biggest stream of revenue. The expenditures are by budget. So as you see, we have legislative, executive, judicial, general governmental, finance, legal, human resources, facilities, engineering, community development, police, corrections, fire, and 911 call center. So in from 2017 through 2020, whoops, let me go back, sorry. Got a little carried away. There we go. The revenue exceeded the expenses in the actual.
Patricia?
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt, but those of us who already have our ARP card, the larger you can make that, the better.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm not sure how to make it bigger. Let's see if we go here and I click on view. I wonder if I can do it that way. Yeah. So. See what that does. No, that didn't work.
Patricia, you can put it in slideshow mode.
Okay.
And then all you'll need to do is advance with a click.
That's what I've been doing, but I was trying to make it larger and it didn't seem to work. So
it's
sorry.
a little better.
You can do it on your clients individually if you go to view options and then zoom ratio to set it to 100% because it's actually very large and it's fitting it just the screen.
Okay.
I had to do it on mine separately though, and I don't know if there's a way you can do it for all of us.
Fit
What
to
was that?
window gets you the best resolution, I think.
This one?
Yeah, for me, fit to window made it very tiny. Actually, changing it to actual size or original size in the options allowed it to get very large. But now I have to move it around on the screen with my mouse to see all of it.
Oh, so you're saying each person individually can increase their own size?
Correct. I had to do that on my client. In the very top, if I'm using a computer, but if you hover over the very top and click View Options, under Zoom Ratio, there's an option to choose 100% or original size in your client. And if you do that, it enlarges it for me. But again, Dee mentioned that it was easier for her to fit to screen. So
Okay.
mileage may vary.
So hopefully everybody can see this. I can follow up by sending this slide packet to everybody after the meeting. So in the 2021 budget, we budgeted, as I said, 763,000 increase in revenues, which is about a 3%. And then we also budgeted for each department. The total was 19,286, which was less than the actuals of 2019. What it shows here, this is where the museum information comes in. So our cash is 24,701,115 projected to be there at January 1st. Our difference between revenue and expenses is a negative 2.3 million, and our cash then would go down to 22,365,000. If I take out the Armory portion of beginning fund balance, which is 21,341,000, then we start the year at 3,359,000 and we end the year at 1,023,000. So that is just an overview. Everybody will be going through their section. So I'll move on to the next slide if nobody has any questions. Okay. So then I always like to put things in perspective with a graph. So if you look at the general fund budget, the largest category is police at 33%. General governmental comes in at 27%, and that's due to the transfers that come out of general governmental into the supportive funds. And I will show that when I go over the general governmental budget. Fire is 16%, the next largest, and then it just goes down from there. But those are the three key ones. And as you would assume, public safety is a large part of most cities' budgets. The Armory fire insurance and expenditure. So this is just summary only. Again, I want Stacy to be able to explain it in much greater and better detail than I could. So it shows the insurance recoveries by year. We currently are still waiting for 5,325,000 that the adjuster is aware of. It has not come in yet. The expenditures add up to 2,386,000, which it gives you that balance of 21,341,000 that was shown on the summary slide. In this budget, you'll see that there are requested positions. Finance, we're asking for an accounting tech 1 for our full-time. We'd like to have a full-time cashier. Engineering is requesting an engineering 3. Community development is already been approved for the position of code enforcement assistant, but they did not fill that position. So that would be a new position for the budget that had already been approved. Parks positions, an administrative assistant, as well as a museum registrar. The way that the allocations work, so for the engineer 3, it's going to be split between the general governmental fund, streets fund, sewer fund, water fund, and industrial water. 30, 20, 20, 20, and 10. The code enforcement assistant split is 10% going into the general governmental and 90% going into the abatement fund. The administrative assistant, the parks position, is going to be split 25% parks, 25% community development, and 50% museum. The impact by fund, so general governmental with the positions that are requested, 136,000 more. All of these ones with asterisks are all supported with general governmental funds, but they're in their own separate fund. And they will go through that when they talk through their own budget. And then sewer, water, and industrial water are all the proprietary funds that have a portion of the engineering 3. Any questions from just the general overview?
Patricia, I'm just kind of curious, you mentioned, or read at the first slide there, it had a grants section, and I didn't really see a huge difference from the previous year. Is there any COVID related income that the city is seeing on this budgeting?
So grants one, we have not received the CARES revenue yet. We've just been spending it. So there hasn't been an impact in the 2021 or 2020 budget because it was not planned for, it wasn't budgeted for. So
that's more of a reimbursement process.
Right, yep. And then we do have 888,090. There are some, both police and fire will be talking through some of the grants they'll be receiving. In the general governmental, I'll talk through one that's coming in through that one. Is that helpful?
Very, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to restart the slideshow again.
I had a question.
Sure.
Is library accounted in there somewhere?
Library
facilities that we account for?
Nope, it's in its own fund, 101 fund, and it will show up when we do the all other funds. I'll have a slide that shows all the funds that we have, cash, revenue, expense, and then ending cash. So there'll be a slide presented tomorrow at the very beginning.
Okay, thanks.
But I'll also show the transfer that's going to the library when I go through the transfers for general fund. Okay. All right, so then the finance department budget. So the key differences in the budget for 2021 is we are now having to pay support for Springbrook at $25,000 is what we are being told that to anticipate. We also are asking for a full-time employee for the front counter and then increased training support for certifications. I have a CPA license. I have to do 40 hours to keep it, but hopefully most of it, thanks to COVID, will be done webinar. They'll offer as many webinars as they did before, which is a much cheaper approach. I do want to talk through the full-time employee that I'm looking for. So in 2013, the previous finance director asked for a part-time position to help with the front counter. That position existed until 2018 when that finance director, I believe it was Mark Folkers, asked to make that person full-time. And so that was full-time from 2018 until 2020, at the beginning of the year when we lost one of our our account tech ones. And so that was not filled. As a result, the concerns I have about not filling, having a full-time front counter person is internal controls. We have a cash box that before this person came in temporarily, we have her there temporarily right now, up to 6 people could have been in and out of that cash box because everybody was covering the front desk. That creates an internal control risk because some of the people that were getting in the cash box are also the same people that are cutting checks, and you don't want to mix those two. It also has helped with customer service. There's times of the month where our utility billing clerk is trying to get the bills out or trying to help people when they get their bills with their questions and their concerns. And that person was also trying to cover the phones, people walking in the door, and anybody coming up to the front desk. We had other people that had deadlines. What it basically did, long story short, is it created a lot of buildup of things that haven't gotten done. And we're finding just in the month that she's been here, we're starting to actually tackle like B&O tax returns, some things that people couldn't find time to get to because of the covering of the counter, as well as the backup duties, the mail, and the other things that came up. So that's why we're asking for it. And just a little bit of history. The next slide will show the budget for finance.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So if we restore that position, does that mean we can be open during the noon hour again?
That's what I'd really like to do. I really feel that being open through the part of the day where people are trying to get their business done would help them. And I think as a city, it would benefit us to be able to be open. But yes, that would be one of the goals. Or one of the things that would actually happen. Let's put it that way. Any other questions? So this is the finance department budget summarized by categories. As you see, the additional position is added at the bottom to bring the budget up to 505. Previous, it was at 442. Like I said, the things that have came up are the software expense that was unexpected, and the other services and charges were our for our professional services. And I have that here, just a sec.
Are we going to get copies of everything? Because we've gotten budget books in the past, and
Yes, the goal is on Friday that when we send out the agenda, there will be all of the funds with a budget, each fund budgeted by category and with a description of each fund, like you used to see in the past. We're working on that right now.
so we won't see that until the agenda packet comes out.
No, because it's we're still in process.
Are we expected to vote on this next week?
That's why, yeah, on Tuesday is the first reading. I think there will be 2 more, so there will be time in between if there are any concerns noted.
I appreciate Councilmember Andrews' question, but I do think this is a time when we all do understand that grace and patience and understanding is needed. But yes, we have the right as a council to take as long as we need until December 31st to get a budget together.
Yes. Any other questions?
I'm a little late to the party with this, but I didn't see anything in there for the city administrator.
It wouldn't be in the finance budget. The mayor.
Oh, this is just, okay.
And no, also up here, it's not in there either. I believe the mayor has, per our discussion, I don't believe his interest is in hiring a city administrator, but I don't want to speak for the mayor. Mayor, if you'd like to speak to that.
All I did was took the city administrator budget out of the mayor's budget, put it back in the general fund.
Oh,
So there's
it'll
not
show
a
up on
separate, there's not a separate account number for the city administrator. It's just
Right,
in the
okay.
general fund.
Okay, so it wouldn't show up in this group.
At this
I get
point,
it.
at this point, it was not added to the budget in any place. So that would be, I believe that was the mayor's preference, but
Yes,
okay.
that's correct.
Oh, okay. Now I'm concerned. Okay.
All right.
Well, Alan, it is this is the mayor's proposed budget, but the council we do have right to make amendments if we want.
Yep.
That's true.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Human Resource Department budget. I'm going to go ahead and just present the generic budget. If you have any specific questions, the mayor and Alicia could get back to you on anything that I may not know. So we've added into the budget a $45,000 for a salary study. The NeoGov support, they have are using it for onboarding, and allowing people to, if they want to work for us, it pulls that information into the NeoGov program. That support cost is $25,000. And then it appears that the claim management has a need to go up $12,000 due to some things that have been happening at L&I. And again, this would be an Alicia answer, but the numbers show that, and the discussion showed it needed to go up. The mayor may or may not have some ideas on this, but that's why the big changes in that budget. And when you look at the budget, it is up due to those things.
Patricia, this is Liz. I have a question. Could you please tell me what onboarding means and how that relates to the NeoGov support?
Sure. So NeoGov supports governmentjobs.com. So if we post a job out online, and of course, I'm not the human resources person, but I've experienced it. We post jobs out on that. You can apply through that web portal directly into NeoGov. So it pulls in the application, it pulls in their resume as an electronic document, and is routed via HR to the department heads that are looking to hire someone. So you can go in and approve or deny people as you go through the list, and then come up with an interview pool that then you can choose as a director again, and then HR helps solidify it all and makes it all work. So it is a very efficient way, paperless way to process job applications.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So are there any questions about that budget that I didn't cover?
I had a quick question. What is best practice when it comes to salary surveys? We just did a quite extensive one not that long ago, as I recall.
That was for employees. This is, or I mean, regular employees. This one is for exempt and department heads, which has not been done for a long time. Okay.
All right. Is that the, can we move on from this, or is there any other questions? All right, I'll go to the next and final section of for me, general governmental budget. So the general governmental budget went up. We had increased transfers out, and I'll go through those when we get to that slide. Legal services, indigent and public defense costs are increasing significantly. We do have reimbursement coming in for the public defense improvement grant. It's $122,000 over 20 and 21. So I put in the $61,000 for 21 with the hope that we have spent at least that in 2020 of that grant. We have till December 31st of 21 to spend it out though. IT services, we have a fund called IT Project that all of the IT support and other services were being posted to, which was then getting a transfer. Sorry, my dog is not being nice. Transfer out of general governmental. So we're just capturing it in the general governmental at this point, with the hope that in 2021 we can do a look with the IT manager as to a best allocation practice and start getting that a little cleaner and easier to follow. Sorry, just a sec. Hold on. Sorry. He's thinking it's playtime, not work time. Sorry.
To say hi.
He's a boxer who is very demanding of attention right now. So let's go back to this one. Oh my goodness. So that's one of the processes that in 2021 we hope to accomplish. And then we also had an insurance cost increase to the general governmental. Again, allocation, the way that was allocated before, didn't take into effect the property damage that was specific to vehicles that were in different funds. So we made sure to update that for the budget for 2021. And if you look at the actual budget, you'll see that we have increased in the IT services. As I said, they were going into a fund that general governmental was contributing to. And then we also have the increased from 2020's 178,000 to 311 for the legal services. And then our other big increase is the transfers. So I've broken out the transfers because that's the one that's the largest increase. And here it is on this slide. So we transfer out of general governmental 4,146,273 in 2021 to cover the library, parks, streets, arterials, homeless response. Hopefully we'll get some money if COVID continues to continue helping pay for that. We're also getting transfer into the recreation sports, which we always have done. Abatement was depleted significantly in 2019 and 2019, I believe. So they have a pretty significant negative fund balance. So we're transferring over for that. Animal control, parking enforcement, museum, public buildings, and that's where the IT was going. So we've reduced that transfer from 270 to 36,000. And then the fire and the police pension both are receiving significant transfers from general fund. So that's where the big money's going, but it's also going to help support all of those different areas. And that's it for the general governmental, unless you have questions on that.
What are other services?
Okay. Other services. So the other services are, we have professional services. Hold on. The auditors go in there, insurance goes in there, voter registration costs, city code costs, AWC dues, those kind of things are going into the other services.
When you mention insurance, is that what the city pays to be insured?
WCIA is our, AWC is who we're in, no, it's WCIA. WCIA provides our liability insurance, our physical property damage insurance, as well as our vehicle damage coverage. So they cover all of our insurance for the city, yes. They're also who defends us if we're sued. They have a significant amount of things that they provide under the umbrella of the WCI insurance.
And then on the transfer out, that means that money is being transferred out of those accounts to the general fund.
From the general fund to these funds that are listed here, yes.
So there's money going into those funds. So the 25,000 that goes into the museum, that's separate from the money that would be allocated for a staff position?
Well, that's the question. The 25,000 is what's been going in there over the years. That fund is in the negative cash, and that fund will be discussed tomorrow. So when I provide you with the list of funds with cash, revenue expense, and then remaining cash, that will show what the result of having that position would do to the museum fund.
It would be really helpful to me and maybe others if we could get this slide presentation emailed to us.
I absolutely will. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. And before Friday, if we could, so that we've got.
I'm actually going to email this out to you as soon as the council meeting is over, or the workshop is over. The other one, there are going to be multiple people providing information in their slides tonight, And the same thing will happen tomorrow. So I'm sure everyone will be happy to forward to you their PowerPoints that they've created.
Patricia, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So Councilwoman Ellis, for the newer council members, in response to what she was asking, the $25,000 for the museum, we know the museum has a request. Another way to look at this is that this is the mayor's proposed budget. The museum has made a request, and the mayor does not look like he is funding it yet. So if the museum is going to get its request, the council will have to find the money for that. It's not currently funded in his proposed budget. And also to the request, and I totally understand our yearning for information at this point in such an odd year, but I know they were working on this PowerPoint right up till this afternoon. And I think, we'll all get there, and this is all good information, and it'll go out as soon as they can send it. Because I also was hoping for more, so we can ask better questions when we have it in advance. And I know that, but that just wasn't possible this year. So we'll just go through it and keep plugging along.
We will get you detail for the out on Friday for the meeting on Tuesday. So you'll have some time to be able to look at some detail stuff. All right.
Everybody will eventually get a budget book as well with all this information. This meeting is just to give everybody a preliminary opportunity to see this stuff and talk about it a little bit. Try to give everybody as much update and information as possible by discussing it before you actually get the book.
So if that is all for me, I will sign off, and Judge Solon is the next one up. Deanne, Councilmember Shaw, you'll be the one guiding people who's next, correct? You're on mute. Okay.
Patricia, before you go, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
How are retirement funds handled?
The pension funds?
Yeah.
So those are transferred from general fund into the pension funds, and then there's a meeting every same time we have council meetings, I believe, about that, and then they determine what can and can't be paid as a committee. And again, HR, Alicia could probably answer that better, but she's not here tonight, so I'm doing my best.
So Councilwoman Ellis, by ordinance, I don't know if it's by ordinance or the law or whatever. However, it's in the code somewhere who is on the pension board. And one of those is the mayor, the council president, the finance director. I mean, the finance chair.
So are you, Liz, is your question referring to monthly benefits?
No, I guess it was more thinking in terms of how those monies are accounted for within general fund or wherever. If they have a separate fund number, and are those monies invested in anything, or are they just sitting in a bank account?
We have funds invested, and they are in separate funds to be tracked. So 611 is one and 612 is the other. Those will be provided to you, and for tomorrow's meeting as part of a summary, but also in the information we'll be sending out on Friday.
So thank you, Director Soul. Judge Solon, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Susan Solon. I've been the judge of Aberdeen Municipal Court for the past 7 years, and I've been a pro tem at the court for 20 years before that. And as Patricia pointed out, the judicial budget is very small. It's about 3% of the city budget. And of that, only about $80,000 of it is, I would call discretionary. The rest is wages and benefits. So of that discretionary budget, this year, I'm not asking for any increase. I'm just asking that the line items be carried over from this year. Regarding wages and salaries, there has been an increase to that due to the reclassification of the 2 court clerks and the court administrator. And that is reflected in the numbers that have been prepared for you today. There are just a couple of house cleaning items on my budget. There are 2 line items. One was called supplies-lobby security, and the other one was called small tools / minor equipment. We haven't used that line item, those line items for years. And I shared that with Patricia. I said, you know, you could just take those out. So this year she is finally deleting those line items. And then there is a line item called attorney appointments, and that is budgeted at $20,000. And that is getting moved into the general fund. A couple of years ago, we moved the public defense contract into the general fund as it was improperly in the judge budget, the judicial budget. And at that time, we should have moved this line item as well. Attorney appointments refers to conflict counsel. So when the public defender who has the contract has a conflict of interest with that case, they are not allowed, obviously, to represent that defendant. And so I have to appoint what's called conflict counsel. They are paid at the same rate as the public defender. And so that's what that line item is for. So they basically are acting as public defenders, but they're conflict counsel. And so Patricia is moving that into the general fund this year. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping on my budget. So not much really that exciting on the numbers. I did prepare just a very short PowerPoint, and I'm going to try and share my screen here. Just to give you just a little overview of the court. I always, this is usually my opportunity to talk with you all, and just in case you have any questions about how it's going at the court. So this is just a graphic with some caseloads, and the Administrative Office of the Courts is the state agency that officially keeps track of all the caseloads for all the courts in the state of Washington. So this isn't something I track. And I put all the municipal courts for Grace Harbor so you can see how Aberdeen compares with the other local courts. We traditionally process about 600, or get new filings, I should say, about 600 new filings more than Hoquiam, which is the court with the next most business. And then you can see it significantly drops. Aberdeen Municipal Court holds court 4 days a week. Hoquiam holds court once a week. And then these other courts, a lot of them are once a month. So we're just a very, very busy court. We're projected this year to do about 200 more cases than we did last year. So as I like to tell people, the coronavirus does not kill crime. So the police have been busy, and so has the court. And the numbers when I made this slide were good through August of 2020. That had been calculated up to then. So that's what was being used to create this slide. Okay, the court we are closest to actually is Olympia Municipal Court. And here this slide is just showing you as of August, Olympia had 11 new filings more than Aberdeen. And so we process about the same amount of cases. We have a lot of court. We both run community courts. We're very similar to Olympia Municipal Court. And I would just like to do a plug here for my staff. They have 8 staff and we have 4 staff. So we have a very efficient court, which goes into my next slide. And the judicial needs estimate is a number that is calculated by, again, the Administrative Office of the Courts. They use the 5 years of past data to determine how many judges your court needs. And courts use this statistic to petition for more judge positions, let's say in bigger cities when they need more judges. So when I made this slide, interestingly enough, we were at a 1.13 need. I am a 0.75. I am a part-time judge. And actually today they came out with new estimates, and they now estimate us at a 1.21. So I just, again, share that information with you to let you know that your court is very busy. I think you all don't see the court very often. We are over there and we are processing a lot of cases. Okay, so this slide was just kind of to summarize what was going on with COVID. And when I look at this slide, it's very sweet and simple, but it actually just does not convey the amount of chaos and stress that COVID, caused on everyone, and obviously the courts. The courts, we have constitutional rights that we are concerned with all the time. So our court remained operational throughout the crisis. We did not miss a day. And when it first started, we transitioned to Skype immediately with the jail. And that's because it was free. We could all get on it fairly quickly. It served our purpose. We were able to keep doing in custody proceedings with the jail. The governor does not control the courts. The Chief Justice issues orders, and that's who we take direction from, although she is in good communication with the governor, and they talk and know what's going on. So she had suspended in-court proceedings for out of custody folks through May. First, it was the end of April, and then it went to May 5th. So we were doing Skype through all of April. We were moving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases. My staff was sending out letters, calling. It was a very busy and stressful time. In the meantime, I was busy trying to figure out how we're going to do court. We have to be open to the public. That, of course, is a rule. And people need to be able to access it. So on May 5th, we transitioned to Zoom webinar is our platform. Throughout all of April, the judges in the state, we are constantly having educational meetings where we're all sharing, what are you doing? What's working for you? What's not working for you? The Chief Justice was on with us a lot. Work groups were convened for how to get juries restarted. It's been very busy for the courts. So anyway, we started off with Zoom, and the justice partners in Aberdeen have been fabulous, from the prosecutor's office, the jail, the police, the public defender. When I announced this is what we're doing, everybody needs to get up to speed. Everybody was doing it. And Zoom court has been actually quite fabulous. The defendants actually, I think, kind of like it a lot. I mean, there's some that don't, but generally they like calling in. They can be on their jobs and take a break. Out of state defendants can deal with their cases now. So it's been effective. So we're still holding court 4 days a week. And now we were going to, jury trials were suspended by the Chief Justice, and then eventually she allowed individual courts to make the determination whether we could go forward with them. So I had worked with the Parks Department on getting the log pavilion set up for jury trials, and it is set up for that. We were set to begin jury trials in September, but the case settled. We had one scheduled coming up in December, but due to the recent activity over the weekend, jury trials will be suspended through February for Aberdeen. And I know Judge Edwards is ordering the same for his Superior Court. Yeah, so that's been, we've been busy. Community court, we've been able to continue with that again through Zoom. Our caseworker is working very hard with folks. Treatment agencies in Aberdeen are open for business and are seeing folks. And I will go to my next slide because that is community court. As of October 27th, we have 136 graduates. Our 3-year anniversary was at the end of February. And at that time we had 100 graduates. And I included on this slide some of the jail, just the cost savings in general that community court gives to the city. Community court doesn't cost the city a dime. So those of us in the courts, we work that just like we do any other docket. The caseworker is employed through CAP, and he is funded through CAP programs. So right now that is working for us. And so we continue to identify people that might benefit from this program to help them get in the law-abiding behavior, help the city, and it's just been going, really well. So we're really excited about this program. We'll have our 4-year anniversary in February, and I'll update all the statistics again at that point. But so far, it looks like we have 80% less crime from these folks. So our recidivism rate is really well. All right, and then we also have a Court and Parks Joint Community Service Program. So this is the program that Stacy and I hammered out together. And I just included the numbers there. You can see how we were doing with how many hours folks are doing through the Parks Department. And in 2020, 100.5 hours were completed before the program had to be suspended due to COVID. So it's still a lot. We were on track to do pretty good in 2020. And so obviously that program will not come back until it's safe to do so. And then that's it. And then this is just a slide again, indicating that I'm not asking for any increase. I think we can get everything done just like we did this past year, and just shows the reclassifications. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about the court business.
I think you're pretty awesome, Judge.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're busy, but it's good. It's been, I will say this, I feel like there is a place for Zoom court even when the pandemic has passed. I really find that is a real, provides a lot of customer service for folks.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I had the same thought. I bet your future has changed when we come back from this. It's probably going to change how the court operates. But not hearing any questions, I also will share, I can empathize with, yes, it's pretty easy to develop a bulleted list of everything you did to pivot to distance courtrooms, but I had jury duty last week, and it was pretty mind-boggling, all the precautions and social distancing and the safety measures that have been implemented in our courts. And there's no doubt in my mind that what I took part in at Superior Court, we're doing just as well in Aberdeen. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Were you at, by the way, were you at the fairgrounds for that?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I know they were doing there.
And I went there fully prepared to say, hey, I know what the procedure should be. And I ended up staying because every protocol that I'm aware of, they were following.
Our biggest issue really is jurors, because right now we're sending out 300 questionnaires, and out of 300, we get about 30 viable jurors. So when I have defendants complain, it's like, look, it's just hard to get jurors that want to show up or are able to. A lot of people have pre-existing conditions, they're vulnerable, they've been ordered to quarantine, whatever. It's, it's a juror issue. It's our number one concern. That's good to hear, Deanne, that you had a good experience.
Yes, I'm practicing social distancing and I felt pretty safe. So I'm sure, again, like I said, in Aberdeen, I'm sure that you're doing just as well as they are out there.
Yeah, we sure hope so.
The other thing I would add to that, if you were able to see the setup that they had at the log pavilion in preparation for trial for Aberdeen, it looked kind of like a demonstration of missing people or something, because the chairs were so far spaced apart that they were, probably about 8 feet apart between all of them. And I think there was only about 50 chairs at the most in the whole building. So it definitely was well set up and prepared for that type of court setting.
I'm glad to hear that. We've been over there several times trying to walk through what issues we anticipate, different microphones. We're going to have, hand sanitizer stations, whatever it is. We have a lot of thoughts going in. Yeah.
Judge Solon, I have a question. This is Liz.
Yes.
The new FTE suggestion of 1.21, that's almost like you're ready for a half-time position. If that's not in the budget for 2021, and you think you're able to hang in there and make it continue to function just at a 3/4 position, at what time maybe would you think either making this a full-time position or 2 part-time positions for judges will be?
That's a little more complicated issue because a full-time judge has to be elected. So it actually changes the dynamic. Right now, I am appointed by the mayor. So if the city were to go to full-time, that is an elected position, and there's probably a lot of other concerns there then that would have to be addressed.
Could we have 2 part-time judges then that are essentially appointed by the mayor?
I don't think so, but off the top of my head, I don't know. I couldn't point to the law on why that is. I don't know any other jurisdiction that works that way. And, I'm familiar with most of the judges in the state. We meet a lot and discuss different things. So, I don't know. I'll look into that.
It's just really amazing to me that Aberdeen is right there along with the city of Olympia, which is a much bigger city
Mhm.
in
Yeah, it
terms
is.
of your caseloads and your and having fewer staff to manage that. It's a lot of wonderful work that you're doing. I just don't want you all to get burned out.
Well, we're lucky right now because our court administrator is just a rock star. She's been at several other courts and she is so knowledgeable that she is just really able to keep our court on track. A lot of other court administrators call her for advice on what to do. And then our assistant court administrator has been with the courts for over 30 years. She has a lot of experience. And then one of our clerks has been with us over 15 years. And now we are training someone new. And that's challenging because you come in and you really don't know what you're doing. And so now the other staff has to carry the load for that person and help train them. And it's hard for even like remote work. When the pandemic hit, we were able to execute telework agreements and everybody could go home and work from home and do a lot of their job. But with the new clerk, there's really no way to send her there unless we're just giving her truly educational materials because she needs the support of the coworkers to assist her with how to get things done because it's very technical, their jobs. So anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Judge. If any council members don't have anything else, anyone else?
Thank you, everyone.
I'm really impressed with the money savings. That really hit me.
Yeah.
Over the way we used to do it, obviously.
It's really nice too because we don't assign a public defender on those community court cases, so it saves that case count on the public defender contract, which is very expensive for the city, right? So that helps with that cost as well, and it helps with the jail cost. It's been a great program. It's additional work for us, but we enjoy thinking we're being a part of helping folks get back on track. So it's good.
Let me point out real quick that for the new council members, that Judge Solon was instrumental in bringing that program and setting it up here in Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was interesting. That was great. We got it going, and it's been, like I said, it's thriving even during COVID. It's nice that, as I said, treatment providers are back, providing services, so that keeps people moving and on track.
It's very exciting. Thank you very much. It's good to know about.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Judge. Next on our agenda is our Corporation Counsel, Patrice Kent.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. As soon as Her Honor has an opportunity to unshare, then I can go ahead and jump in as well. Or to close it. Maybe I just need to I can't start the screen share. According to the magic Zoom, I can't start it while the other participant is sharing.
You think I could get out of it, but easier said than done. Stop. There we go. There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrice.
Yep. Thank you, Judge.
How many of you council members wanted to click on the X? And it wouldn't work.
All right. Well, now it's my turn. Let's see what I'm going to do. Come on, share. And we will go to here, and we will go to, where did I go? The slideshow. We'll just go ahead and start this from the beginning. So thank you all, members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to present my proposed 2021 budget. My name is Patrice Kent. I'm the Corporation Counsel for the city. And I would also like to thank Judge Solon for presenting with respect to community court. I was able to come up with a couple more points on my on my presentation for that tonight. So I just want to go over, I know we've had this conversation several times, but since there are new city council members, I would like to just share that there are a variety of responsibilities that my office has in addition to litigation. So we do represent the city of Aberdeen in city actions, which includes appearances with outside counsel, state and federal courts, negotiation with regulatory agencies. I will note that while Finance Director Sol was absolutely correct in that the WCIA, which is the risk pool that we are a member of, does provide legal defense for us in many, if not most cases. That doesn't mean that that my office does not support that and provide additional. And there are also instances where WCIA does not actually provide defense services based on what our insurance coverage is. One of those that many of you may remember were the multiple federal cases that were brought related to the homeless situation that we've got going. So that was strictly out of this office. So, so that is in addition to what WCIA does help us with defense-wise. In addition to the civil actions, we represent the city in prosecuting criminal actions in the municipal court. As Judge Solon has just said, over the last 3 years, there's an average increase of about 200 cases per year. I have one prosecuting attorney. I'm going to stick this in the back of your mind as well. I have one prosecuting attorney, and the city of Olympia has 3 who are dedicated to prosecuting criminal actions. And he does an excellent job. And our public defense contract has an average of about 3 dedicated public defenders, in addition to conflict counsel that Judge Solon talked about. So in addition to prosecuting at Aberdeen Municipal Court, if those are then cases are appealed, then either Forrest or myself will respond to appeals in Superior Court and maintain that caseload as well. And there is the weekly community court diversion program that Judge Solon just described, and the prosecutor does, or this office does represent the city in that, in that situation, to make sure we're all moving forward. It is an excellent program. It is now being held on Tuesday afternoons, and you can Zoom in. It's open court, so if you'd like to Zoom in and listen to that at any time, I'm sure that the judge would welcome that, and you can really see and hear the value that it has for our community. In addition to the litigation side, we have corporate functions that include advising departments before we get to litigation, which my personal opinion is, if my clients are in jail or in court, then I didn't do my job up front, and so we need to work on that a little more. So I do advise all the departments about legal risk and how to manage that. And we do the review of proposed or amended ordinances. We work with the department heads and the elected officials on that. I draft and review contracts so that they're protective of the city. We have 4 unions representing the majority of the employees of the city, and this office not only participates in negotiations, but we have regular labor management meetings. And if there are any grievances, then I work with them through the grievance process as well to support the department heads so that we are all on the same page as well as possible. And in addition, addressing governance questions. Several of you have called or reached out to find out what is your role in a given situation. That is part of my responsibility, as well as interpreting the municipal code and advising folks with respect to compliance with local, state, and federal law. I realize I'm looking off to the corner because that's where y'all are in my screen. So I apologize if that's disturbing to you. Also, there is online publication of the local ordinances, and this office manages that process as well. So those are kind of our responsibilities, and we do those things with 4 full-time staff members, myself, a deputy corporation counsel and prosecuting attorney, a legal administrative assistant who primarily assists in criminal side, and then a legal administrative assistant / record specialist, which was just added to this office in 2019, which supports administration, the civil operations, as well as public records responses. Everyone is considered exempt under the Federal Labor Standards Act as well, and they are not represented by a union. Of those 4 people, one is eligible for longevity premium pay. Thank you for adding that to the unrepresented employees this year. And 3 of the four of us are eligible for both step increases and COLA adjustments. And that comes into account as we're talking about changes to our payroll costs. And then just to provide context for where there was the background, and here's kind of the context for where the budget was developed. At the time of the budget was developed, there wasn't a formal revenue projection. I will tell you that I proposed this budget because there is some deferred maintenance that we need to take care of with respect to literally things like getting new filing cabinets and organizing our files, in addition to upgrading our training for all 4 staff people and the legal library that we need to maintain as well. So in 19 and 20, the budget requests remained flat. This year, it's a total year-over-year increase of $30,407 as far as proposed from 20 to proposed to 2021. It represents about a 6% increase, and it does not include the application of the reallocation plan, which Finance Director Soul discussed earlier, and that's one of the payrolls. And there we are. And then there are 14 lines of my budget that I am particularly responsible for. And within those 14 lines, that accounts for just under $20,000 of the $30,000 increase. So moving forward, I'm going to go through this just a little bit at a time. If you'd like to stop in the middle, please do. And we'll start with the supply line, and I need to figure out how to get you all put somewhere else so that I can see. There we go. The supplies, which include an increase of $1,000 from the 2020 increase. I will also point out that I feel that our year-to-date numbers from this year are really artificially depressed because we have been remote, because we've taken a lot of time away. We haven't been in the office as much. So I would ask you to remember that as we're moving forward. Last year was the first year that we had the fully staffed office with 4 people. So we started to move up, and then we need supplies for mailing, public records requests. The thumb drives are purchased by this office as well as managed by it. We have, as I said, files and filing cabinets, organizational items. That is the supply line. And the law library, there is an increase. We're looking at $1,500. The laws change fairly regularly. So this law library is not a series of books. It's actually online online subscriptions, but we do have some that are also physical copies of books. And it depends on the situation, which is more has a greater value. There are what are called desk references for example, in real estate, which is about 3 or 4 different volumes of several hundred pages each volume, and it is not inexpensive. It's about $1,500 to get the full set, and that full set hasn't been updated since is being updated, and it previously hadn't been updated since I believe about 2014. It includes things like land use decisions, planning, comprehensive planning, so that I can provide additional support for our community development. Minor equipment, it is an increase of about $500, and that would help with some of the supply, storage and supply management we've got going. Professional services, there is a $2,500 increase. This is where the language line services that y'all approved the contract for sometime last month will come in, so that the prosecutor will be able to manage reasonably for those who have either English as a second language or who don't speak English competently and yet need to report and provide evidence in a variety of cases. It may also be assist with some of the litigation that we've got going that has been approved, that we are bringing in support of against McKinstry in support of the Armory fire. Trying to get some recovery there. Professional, so that's where I am. At this point, are there any questions? Okay, moving on. Next, the professional services temp agency. I've never used this. I don't know when it was last used, and I'm not sure why it's here. So I will talk to Finance Director Sol to see if we can get that pulled out for 2022. Legal services, you'll see that this is an increase of about $2,000, and this is arising based in part out of our mediation arbitration claims that came out last year. We were able to work around it and not use it. We are, however, still active with we've got outside counsel. We have a particular lawsuit that we are in, that WCIA has been defending and has agreed to continue to defend. But because of the nature of the claim, if another such claim were to come forward, I don't believe that they would. It's outside the terms of our coverage, and so we may need something like that. I don't want to invite trouble, but I'd like to plan for it if we can. The $2,000 increase in telephone is we did get 4 cell phones for the department, because I've got 3 people that are regularly working remotely and a 4th who sometimes works remotely. And if we need to talk to each other rather than using private cell phones for business work, that's where that comes from. Postage, similar. Similar with postage, we're active litigation that's been approved. The cost of overnighting stuff just keeps going up. Travel is going to be is big in my budget this year, and I hold that number. Again, we've got active litigation. We've got depositions that'll be coming forward that may or may not be likely to not be in Aberdeen. So to travel to that, it's not unusual to have multi-day deposition that you have to attend, or to support other staff people who are in to make sure that we're adequately represented. In addition, I have 4 people who hopefully next year will be able to travel to some of the trainings so that they can maintain their professional qualifications. So that's where that is coming from. Equipment repairs, I'm leaving that at the $500 for the 2020 that was approved. And I think this is my last line of budget numbers. Dues and subscriptions at $2,500. We have a minimum, our bar association dues went up this year, so I think we have a minimum of $500 each for Forrest and I, plus additional subscription to professional newsletters, et cetera, and or registrations for training, which I have also bumped up by another $1,500. For 4 people, that's $1,000 a year. That sounds like a lot until you start looking at trying to get paralegal training or specialized trainings for record retention and legal office management. In addition to, people seem to think that attorneys are made of money. So it's an average of $100 per credit for continuing legal education generally, and you need at least 15 of those per year per attorney. We are very fortunate that we are members of the Washington State Association of Municipal Attorneys, which offer very reasonably priced trainings and some free through the seminar this year. Printing, I went to $500 this year, which is a $400 increase because last year I had to do the submission for the Supreme Court, which has with the printing requirements. And so I got all panicky. And so I added $500 for this year, miscellaneous going up because this year has been this year at 2020 and a little fearful of that. Office equipment at the bottom, it is a $1,500 increase. Initially, it was for computers because 3 of our 4 have kind of aged out. And so I thought it was going to need to replace and or take care of some laptops through this. With the CRF money, it is covering those. So I'm pretty comfortable that we could reduce that more. And that's where I am. Are there any questions?
This is Tawny. I have one.
Okay.
I wasn't aware we were in active litigation in any cases right now.
So we have ongoing litigation there is the approved litigation that we brought in with the insurance companies, which is against McKinstry to recover there, and that is a firm out of LA. We have been sued, and this has been kind of ongoing, but starting to heat up with some that's covered. I would be very interested in providing a litigation update at an executive session at probably not the next city council meeting because I will not be there, but at the first city council meeting in December.
Okay.
Any other council members?
You mentioned the budget item for flash drives, and I was just curious what you're using flash drives for. That would be a major budget item.
Well, it's in supplies, and it is for responses to the Public
it's-
Records Act requests. In addition to transferring information for discovery for some of the litigation that we're in.
Oh, okay.
So I
I was
would
just
think
curious.
on the flash drives in particular, there would be a corresponding revenue thing because you can charge the requester of a public records request the cost of providing that flash drive.
That is correct, and I don't know how finance has set that up. So I was taking this. And Patricia and I have not had a
I
chance
just
to
want
talk
him to
about it.
know that we don't have to absorb the cost of providing that flash drive to a requester. But it would
Correct.
represent an increased line item, so.
Correct.
So I did have a question about the phones. If you, would that not be a CARES Act?
And initially
Yes?
when it was looked at, it was not because it can be used longer term. I will verify that, but it will be a cost that certainly will extend into 2021 at this point, which is not going to be, which as of today is not going to be reimbursable.
So prior to the pandemic, we weren't issuing city-owned cell phones to people to work from home. I would
Correct.
think that it would qualify. Hopefully we look into that pretty closely.
Yeah, we had previously, and I believe that Stacy Barnum is on, and so I will ask her to make a note of that as well, to check into the cell phone service. I would also ask that when we get to the point of talking about what budgets will look like next year, as I said, I set this budget up to address some what I referred to as deferred maintenance. You can see when you get the numbers, you can see that my year to date is quite low and previous years have been a little lower as well. So I've tried real hard to make sure that we are under budget because I come from a very thrifty family. So, and I am used to operating in with a client who is very aware of budgets. So I just want you to be aware of that as well.
Thank you. Any other council members? Okay, well, thank you, Corporation Counsel.
Mhm.
And next on our agenda is the fire department budget. So I would turn it over to Fire Chief Tom Hubbard.
Good evening. I'm going to give it a shot, sharing my screen, see what happens. You see a large PowerPoint?
There we go.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we have some new council members, some seasoned council members. I'll do a little bit of education, a little bit of budget run through. I do not get down the weeds when you get your books, as people have done before. If you have questions on particular things, you can come in and talk. Councilperson Shaw is good for that. She'll come in and ask the hard questions, and I appreciate that. So we're going to proceed ahead. So what I'm presenting is the fire budget, the EMS budget, and the 911 call center. And we'll move ahead. If you have questions, we'll answer them at the end, but if something pops up, wave your hand, or let's see if we can get it to work. There we go. So as I talked about, the fire department is split in two. It's fire and EMS. The fire fund 00148 is the general fund. The EMS is a utility, supposed to be self-funding and comply with all the RCWs for a utility. We'll get into the numbers a little bit more, but I want to show you that on the EMS side, the personnel costs are 87% of the budget, and on the fire, it's 75%, because we don't make anything. We send a lot of people to help people who are having problems, and that takes personnel. And our equipment is expensive, but we have really well-trained people that do a lot of amazing things. And with all things COVID, we've been living this since February. We never stopped. We've actually increased with what we're doing. And where people are socially isolating and staying away from others, we're actually getting donned in our equipment and going into houses with confirmed COVID cases. So I appreciate my people every day and tell them that it's not going unnoticed, the harm's way that they're going in. So the fire budget, which is red because fire is red, that is 3 administrative staff. So that's myself, the assistant chief, and the fire administrative coordinator. Part of our salary is EMS, the fire service specialist, which you approved for this year, and then 15 of the line personnel. The EMS fund, which is 120,000, is again part of my salary, the assistant chief, and then it's 100% of our EMS account specialist that does our EMS billing, and then 21 line personnel. So these two funds fund your Aberdeen Fire Department. So just a real quick organizational chart. That is how we are currently laid out. We'll talk other things in a few slides from now, but that is our current makeup. And we currently have 20 paramedics and 16 EMTs. We are bleeding paramedics, and we'll talk about that later, but that is our current setup. They work 24-hour shifts, 24 hours on, 48 hours off. Oftentimes, and it's still the same, but back when I was on shift, I'd come to work, make my bed, and then the next morning put my bed away without ever having gotten in it. And those make for long 24-hour shifts. So wear and tear is always something we're concerned about, but that is currently how we're operating. Our call volume, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but we've slowed down a little bit with COVID. We've seen a little bit of a lull, but not a lot. But what we are seeing is we're going to people who should have called us 2 or 3 days earlier. And so now when we're going, and we could have given a breathing treatment to prop them up and get them right, now we're going and having to do invasive procedures. So that's very troublesome. And so we're always trying to get the word out that don't not call us. We will do the best we can for you, but we're seeing people with chronic conditions that are letting them exacerbate and getting where now we have to do some very advanced things and they have to go to the hospital. And so it's being seen all over the country with that. I think the original message of if you weren't sick, don't go to the hospital because the hospitals were overwhelmed may have backfired a little bit, but we're still trucking along. Just a 10-year graph, constant up and downs. The reds hang steady. The red is fire, and we're running 400 to 500 fire calls. That doesn't mean a structure fire. A lot of them are structure fires, but it captures everything in that world, from burning complaints to fires on the South Side Dike to structure fires to kitchen fires to car fires. So it captures all of that. We're a very busy department with that. I was just spent the day with a battalion chief from Olympia, and our fire incidents far outnumber theirs. We have older construction. We have a lot of rentals. We have things that keep us very busy and very experienced. We have a very experienced fire department. And that's one of the things he was talking about, that even as a BC, the experience that he's had, it doesn't compare to some of the things our people have seen. And so he always likes to talk to me about what we're seeing and what we're doing. So here's the general fund broken down into the main categories. As you can see, the salary and wages and personnel benefits, that's the bulk of it, because we use our people to provide the service. That's what we do. We are a service-driven agency. We're all about customer service and trying to make people's lives better on a really bad day of their life. So supplies is next, and that's just everything to keep the system running. That's from pens and papers to fire hose to uniforms to things like that. The other services and charges, some of you may not be familiar with that term in the budgeting world. That covers everything from utilities to professional services to similar to the RFA study that's going on now. Those costs are put in there, and that's why you'll see it's a very large budget item in most budget, because it's kind of the catch-all. It's not supplies, it's not wages, it's everything else that falls into a budget. And then the interfund loan. This will be the second of a 3-year payment of the 2020 fire apparatus. We made the decision early on to buy relief for the budget for COVID that we do an interfund loan to Public Works. This will be the second payment. Next year will be the third and final, and you'll have paid off your beautiful fire engine. So that helped the budget, and it's represented in the budget as this. And so that payment is principal and interest combined together for a total fire department budget from the general fund of $3,149,000. Questions on the fire before we move on?
I just had one question, Chief. I know that it's especially this slide that we're looking at. It's relevant, but it's not necessarily on this budget yet. But training and certification, because of the changes with Grace Harbor EMS,
that's the next. That's coming up.
Okay.
Nope, you're good. But I may not have hit that. So.
Chief Hubbard, I was wondering, what do you do about like mechanical maintenance, servicing the big rigs and other vehicles?
So that is another one of those. Let me see if I can go back. Hey, look at that. So that is captured in other services and charges. So one of the big costs is fuel and insurance is operation and maintenance. You'll see that in your budget. And then the other one is, let me see if I can find it. Equipment repairs. So We have spent a lot of money on the fire side on the older fire engines. Now, knock on wood, everybody knock on wood, with the new fire engines. We're hoping that those, thank you very much, Councilperson Kennedy. We're hoping we don't see that. I just did have to put $7,000 into our 2001 because a primer pump failed, and that is the cost of doing business. The only thing worse than fire apparatus and ambulance maintenance is if you own a boat, and that's the honest truth. They get used a lot. They're very technical, and you have to be very specialized to work on them. So for day-to-day maintenance or oil changes, things like that, the fire engines are going over to either Peterbilt or Empire Transmission, same for the ambulances. And then if it's repairs based that has anything to do with the firefighting system on board, that has to be done by a company that we use that is certified to work on emergency equipment, because of it has to be certified and pack pump tests and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Hey, Chief.
So just some of the,
just real quick, the item for supplies, $113,000. Has that gone up significantly because of PPE?
you know, not really. That is mainly captured on the EMS side. There is some things, there's some facility things that we've done this year. We're kind of a test case for a UVC inline light for the Fire Station 2 HVAC system. Action Air said, hey, we'll put this in at cost for just the price because we've heard good things. We know it's safe. I'm not making the Southside people be guinea pigs or anything, but this light it filters the air that's going through the return, and is known, they're guaranteeing that it's killing molds, bacteria, and COVID-19. So we're pretty excited about that. And that cost did go into the fire side under facilities.
Thank you.
Most of my COVID, though, has been on the EMS side.
Is that for the station?
Yes.
Air
it's
handling
in the
system
station.
Oh, I've
Yes.
read reports about this from other countries, and it's an amazing deal. And yeah, it just
Right.
takes care of it all.
So just since we're off topic, and that's usually where I get dangerous, but I'll stay on track. But we also purchased a UVC portable light. It was a very spendy thing, but that cost has been submitted as part of my overall costs for the CARES CRF Relief Fund. But it is, we first started reading about it in March, and it finally was approved and developed, and we took possession of it probably 3 weeks ago. It was designed by firefighters for fire stations, but I'm sure it's going to get other application. To me, it looks like a large bug zapper, so I call it the bug zapper. That's really what it looks like. But it's used, we put it in ambulances, we put it in, you move it throughout the fire station. It's got a timer. We're following strict guidelines because you can't look at it and you shouldn't be around it. But we've also provided that same information to Chief Shoemate because we think it'll have an excellent application inside the jail. So that was a spendy bill, but because we're seeing this all the time, and if we go on a confirmed COVID patient, we're taking about an hour and a half to decontaminate that ambulance just to make sure anything we can do to make it safer for our people, we're doing that. So that's some of the costs that we're seeing. All right, back on topic. All right, so the 2021 fire budget highlights. We are moving ahead with the RFQ for fire station and criminal justice building site location and design. It's critical infrastructure. The closing date for that is April, so that will be the 2021 budget. It was budgeted for this year, but that was one of the things we took off the table to help reduce the impact for COVID. both police and fire have budgeted $40,000 each just as a starting point. We're very excited. Lisa Scott has taken the lead and published as the contact. And I think at the last one I saw, we've got 21 requests to submit for that proposal. So it's generated huge interest and we are thrilled about that. And so thank you all. As I mentioned, the 2020 fire apparatus, second of 3 interfund loans, and we'll have that paid off, which is awesome. My fire service specialist, she started in August and is making great gains. As you all seen, we've already made 2 public safety videos, and then we're heavily involved with the public health and their opioid outreach team, and they're helping offset her salary with a monthly payment for the next 18 months. So that's huge. Do need to get her a vehicle next year. That'll come out of equipment rental reserve. The funds are there, so it won't come out of the budget. And then we'll also surplus the current car that she is using that I understand had to get pulled into the station today and 3 inches of water vacuumed out of it. So it has a leak. We will auction that off and put it back into equipment rental. And then the fire budget also includes money for the Regional Fire Authority, ESCI, and their consulting fee. And the next slide talks about that a little more. That line item is offset by the revenue that we receive from Hoquiam for the services that the Assistant Chief and I are providing. And so really it's a neutral cost because the money that's coming in directly to the city is then offset by the costs to the consultant. So, and that was my plan all along. That was my gift to you.
That is
So,
a grant
let's
from the
talk-
Community Foundation, correct?
Yes, I believe, I haven't seen that specifically, but Brian Shea did get some money that will help go towards that, but there's going to be additional costs as we ramp up even more. But the base fee of 10,000, yes, I believe was covered. So that's a huge thing. So I wanted to talk about the RFA a little bit. I'm sure that you're all aware. We've been meeting since June 25th, formally as the RFA Planning Committee. We've been working on it for much longer than that through the feasibility study and everything that's been going on. Multiple committees are working. They're putting in a lot of work. That does cost overtime because they can't really do it while they're working. So they're meeting either through Zoom now, in person, masked up before. This thing is gaining traction, and we try and give reports at the council meetings, either Councilperson Ross or myself or Shaw will talk about it. They're both on the committee, but I just wanted to remind you, this is rapidly gaining steam. There is the hope that it'll be able to go before the voters by next November. I don't know if that's realistic, but it's always good to have a plan. So now we'll move to the EMS fund. That's a 120. It's a utility. Salary and wages and personnel benefits take up a large chunk of that because once again, that represents 21 people, part of myself, the assistant chief, all of the EMS accountant, and part of the administrative coordinator. Supplies for the EMS side is basically what goes in the back of an ambulance, and medications and all those supplies are incredibly expensive. They fluctuate like a commodities market, and my person that's in charge of that actually watches the prices because some of the medications that we have to buy will fluctuate $30 or more in a day. It's incredible. So that is a huge part of our costs. Once again, the other services and charges is the big catch-all. And Dave, that is where the training comes in for the EMS. And yes, I vastly increased my EMS budget in the past. For the last 20 years, Grays Harbor Transit and Grays Harbor EMS have had a good working relationship. the transit served as a pass-through funding mechanism for transit for Grace Harbor EMS, where part of the sales tax they captured would fund Grace Harbor EMS. The most recent figures for Grace Harbor EMS is about $200,000 to $220,000 a year, funds the entire Grace Harbor EMS system, the 450 EMS personnel that work under it, under Dr. Buck's medical program director license, all the coordination of training, certification. It also provided us equipment grants and reimbursement for mandatory training for paramedics. That's all going away. So I have 20 paramedics that every year have to go to advanced cardiac life support and pediatric life support and all these trainings that cost $300 to $400 to $500 depending on where we can get them in. We used to get reimbursement for that, so we're not moving forward. So my budget reflects an increase in that training line item. Reallocated costs, that is, you'll see at the top, and that's going to be in every utility, I believe, but that is the EMS share of helping to sustain human resources, legal department, and payroll for their work on behalf of the utility. So that cost is transferred out of the EMS fund to the general government to help do that. And then the transfer out for 911 is the EMS share of the 911 budget, which we will cover in a minute. But the city of Aberdeen has its total fee, and then I take the call volume of the police and the fire, figure out the percentage of what's our department, and then I take 80% or so of ours is EMS, and that is how we figure that 41,000 will go to offset the general fund hit. Budget highlights for EMS. As of right now, and what I have presented to the mayor and worked with the finance director on, by using some cash reserves, we do not need to raise the EMS availability fee. It currently sits at $23.87 a month. I think with everything that's going on with COVID and with the possible future of an RFA, we were both comfortable with using some cash reserves to buy down the rate and maintain it at $23.87. We're using our ground emergency medical transport money to do this. It's a federal program to help us offset the cost of Medicaid, where in the past, if we transport a Medicaid patient, even if our rates were $400 a trip, we would get $112 from Medicaid. They've finally realized that. We're in our third or fourth year. It has definitely helped our revenue to make it more realistic with what we're doing. Part of the costs in that other big fund is to participate in GEMT. You have to do a very detailed cost report. It ends up to be about 30 pages. I actually have a Zoom final closeout for this year's submission, which is due at the end of November. That is a $30,000 flat fee that we pay to Public Consulting Group, but it's a very detailed report with a lot of data pull. And so we provide the data and then we work with them. Possibly in the distant future, our finance department could do that, but right now it's such a unique thing that it's worth the return to have this special group do it. Plan to buy an ambulance in 2021. I had one budgeted for this year, and then COVID hit, installed that, and then we had our ambulance destroyed on I-5 South, so we had to work through that. So we'll be getting that one back actually December 23rd. We'll go down and pick it up. So they actually turned that around rather quickly with the remount. But in 2021, I'll use ER&R funds to get an ambulance to try and stay on our replacement schedule. The longer an ambulance stays on the road, the more expensive it gets. So we really are trying to hit that 10-year turnaround. And right now we're at 12 to 13. And so the final line item, which did increase my budget, but with the use of cash, it's not increasing our availability fee. And I've been talking about this for a while. is I have funds in there to send 2 internal personnel to paramedic school. The tuition is about $10,000 a piece. The big cost is the overtime, because while they're in school, that's going to be their full-time job. It's very intense. It's very demanding. I will figure out how to choose the personnel that goes. We'll have an internal list. They have to have their prerequisites out of the way. My preference will be Tacoma Community College. But the big cost is the overtime to backfill. And as they get further into the program, it will require probably a complete backfill. So I've captured that in my overtime costs. For those of you that are aware, we've been trying to hire paramedics for the last several tests over the last few years. We'll have 1 or 2 applicants apply. We're just not getting paramedic applicants. So I think the next best thing, and what other departments are doing, even on the I-5 corridor, is they're identifying internal candidates who have the drive and the will to go to paramedic school, because it's not easy. But that way we know, okay, we know them, they've been in our department, they understand the system, and they'll make excellent paramedics. So that is included in the 2021 budget. EMS availability fee, just to show the math on how we came up with keeping it 2387. The plan is to use 376,000 of cash reserve. Our revenue projections are conservative. They're looking at this year, which revenue was down a little bit because of our decreased call volume. And when I mean decreased, it's about 200 calls over the whole year. So it's not even really noticeable. We could see runs start to increase. We've had some crazy busy shifts lately as winter is hitting, and we're seeing not just COVID, but we're seeing some influenzas and some things hitting. So once again, my public safety, wash your hands, social distance, wear a mask, and stay safe. But by using the cash, we don't have to raise the availability fee. And I think with what's going on with COVID, that's a really good thing for us to do right now. And the finance director was comfortable with my logic, and we both agreed that this would be a good year to do that. Last one for me, it's 911 call center, which is pretty simple. They sent us an invoice for $329,465. I did the math. The EMS will kick 41,000 back towards that. Just remember, the 911 call center is a fully staffed, very professional entity that sits up at the old East Campus, staffed 24 hours a day. And so while that is expensive, and while Aberdeen is paying the largest share in the county based on their new fee allocation, it's not a service that we could pick up for that amount of money. So the police chief and I sit on the operating board. The mayor sits on the administration board. So we have a direct hand in the operations of the 911 center. And it's just one of those things. Questions?
Did you say that
Comment.
drug and supplies cost for the ambulances can go 30% either way in a day?
Well, that may have been me ad-libbing. It may be in a month, but I'll call them up and I'll say, what did you order? Same thing I did last month. So, but it's incredibly expensive, and medications that truly used to be $1 per vial now can be $45 per vial. And you hear the same thing nationwide. Specifically, people that are trying to buy insulin can be just outrageously expensive. Well, we're not immune to that. So
I have a comment, Chief.
yes,
As
sir.
you know, a couple of the other fire departments around here purchased new fire trucks, or new to them, new used ones. And one particular fire department bought 2 from one source. And we were kind of slapping each other on the back and laughing and joking around. And finally got the kind of the comments led towards, well, how much did you pay? What did you have to pay for that? So let me just say this. You guys at our fire department did a fantastic job of speccing and negotiating for the 2 new fire trucks we got. I will. So if you can get my gist of what I'm saying there, we did great.
We did, and that committee worked long and hard on that. It was a very large committee, and then it kind of filtered down to a final 4 or 5 that carried it through to the end. But they put a lot of work into that, and the marching orders for me were, make this a working fireground type fire truck, something that when it's ergonomically sound and functionally sound. Too many times you see fire departments try and have one fire engine do everything under the sun, from hazmat to rehab to medical transport to all these things. And then you have this huge monstrosity that really doesn't do anything well. So this apparatus committee really just hit it out of the ballpark. They're beautiful for one thing, but they're very functional, very functional.
Great, good job.
Chief Hubbard, I was wondering, I think you get reimbursed by either an individual's insurance or by Medicaid, as you mentioned, when there's an ambulance that carries someone to the hospital, per se. Does that add up to a significant coverage of some of your expenses?
So yes, we bill for service. We have our established EMS rates by ordinance, and they're either advanced life support or basic life support or specialty care. There's some different categories based on the severity of the patient. And then we bill the insurance companies, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance or self-pay, and that we have a full-time EMS billing accountant that works in our department. That is all she does. She does EMS billing, the initial billing, following up with insurance, checking with the hospital. But it does not support the entire operation. So we call that the demand fee. That is the fee that when we go out and provide a service and transport the patient, then we bill for that service, but it does not support the whole system. So therefore we have the availability fee, which is your household fee of $23.87 per month. That then is what we call is the system readiness fee, or the system being available to have paramedics in a staffed ambulance that's well equipped, ready to go. And so between those two funds is how we fund the EMS revenue. We don't have an EMS levy. That is not something we've done. And then with the RFA looming on the horizon, there's a whole different way of funding it. And the EMS availability fee may go away, and it'll be a combination of billing for service, an EMS levy, and property taxes. So that's still to be determined. That's what the RFA committee will need to wrestle with soon.
Thank you.
Any other?
And as I mentioned, as you get your budget books, if you have questions, I'm always here.
Thank you, Chief. Hearing no other questions from council members, we'll move on in our agenda, and we'll turn it over to Police Chief Steve Shumate.
Thank you, Council President Sean. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think I said this last year as well, but Chief Hubbard is just a tough act to follow, and I think I'm gonna have to up my game next year and put in some color pie charts and graphs and what have you. So
it's also not helping you that it's 20 after 8.
you know, it is what it is. And as you can see, I'm still at the office, so it's all good. But Anyway, well, thank you, Council President Shaw, members of council, fellow department heads, and the mayor. There is a total of 7 budgets associated with the police department. The numbers I think you have on the email agenda. The biggest one, of course, being police, which is the 00145. 46 is corrections. We have a separate animal control budget, park and enforcement budget, police canine, drug enforcement, and then finally the Department of Justice, which was our school resource officer. So I do have a short PowerPoint as well, and I will be hitting on a number of those. So let me do the screen share, hopefully.
There it is.
And is it full screen?
No, I can see your.
How about that?
There you go. Now you got it.
Okay, let me back. Well, I think you saw the first page there. So this is my 3rd year of doing budget presentation. And as I've done with the first 2 years, and kind of along the same line as Chief Hubbard made mention, a bit of this will be some education for perhaps the newer members. But I too will share that when you get your budget books, and I'm assuming the notes that I left will be included with those. I left a lot of notes to describe various sections of the budget. So please feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you may have with respects to the details of the specific budgets. But anytime I go into a budget, my experience prior to coming to the city of Aberdeen was always to have goals in place. And so as you can see there, I have my 5 bullets. Those really haven't changed over the last 2 years, other than for those who were here for the budget cycle during 2019 and 20, the first bullet that I had was to improve the safety of department members. And I believe we truly have made strides in that. When I first came to Aberdeen, we were the only corrections facility within the county, probably one of the very few in Western Washington that did not have armed staff. And here at times, we would be transporting very, very dangerous individuals, whether it be up at the hospital or to other holding facilities or the sheriff's office. So very thankful that the city council approved, and we were able not only to arm our correction staff, but they also got the necessary training and ongoing training associated with that. So obviously for me as chief, health, safety, and well-being of my department members is first and foremost. Along that same line, attempting to maintain the adequate staffing levels to go along with not only the call volume that we continue to experience, but it really seems over the past, well, more so 2 to 3 years, that we have seen elevated circumstances with respect to calls and the severity, shall I say, just a lot more engagement with individuals who are armed. A lot more engagement with individuals in crisis, and so it certainly is challenging for the safety of our staff. So maintaining that staffing level is, of course, very important. Retention of experienced and trained staff. Unfortunately, last year we did lose one of our public or police service specialists to the sheriff's office, and earlier this year we lost one of our police officers. But by and large, I think those were unique and the reasons that they left. And so for the most part, we aren't losing individuals to other agencies. And then 4th bullet, of course, always working to improve efficiency for the agency. And we have done a lot over the last 2 years to do that. And then the last one, which I'm very passionate about, is the engagement with our community. Next slide there. I'm hoping your screens are big enough to be able to see this. I apologize if not, but I just wanted to hit on some of the highlights from this year. Obviously, everybody experiencing the challenges with the pandemic. I will say some of the exciting things that happened this year. We started our 2nd annual West County Citizens Academy, which is co-hosted with the Hopeland and Cosmopolis Police Departments. That's the 5th one that I've been involved with. Always a joy to be involved with our public, our citizens, to get a taste of what public safety is about. But we did have to suspend that due to COVID. However, we did add 8 more citizen volunteers to our VIPs program, and we're looking actually, I guess, at 2 more individuals. So very excited of the community engagement with the department, even with what's going on. And of course, the COVID emergency proclamation issued February 29th. Did have excited to be able to promote Commander Dale Green on March 1st. That was almost a full year in the making. He replaced Captain Dave Johnson, who had retired March 15th the year before. So there was a lot of work that had to go into upgrading that or changing the job description a little bit, making that an unrepresented position. And so we were just excited to get him promoted. Lieutenant Andy Snodgrass, May 1st, replaced Dale Green, who had promoted up. During the year, we've had 4 full-time employees either retire or depart, and we had a half-time employee that departed. We have more retirements scheduled for 2021. So we did hire 3 employees. However, we froze the vacancies when COVID hit just because we didn't know, what the budget was going to look like later in the year. And as Judge Solon made mention and Corporate Counsel Patrice Kent, COVID did slow down for a period of time, but then it quickly picked back up. And I ran some figures from September and October, and it even exceeded last year's totals, which 2019 was a very busy year. And as you can see there, we had 74 more calls in September and October of this year than we did last year. And unfortunately, and which I think most people know, we did have the officer-involved shooting that occurred September 1st. That had 3 officers out for almost a month while that investigation went on. And then more exciting news to end with, November 9th and 12th of this month, we promoted Sergeant Dave Cox and Gary Sexton. And then, of course, our Shop with the Cop coming up. We've identified 5 families with a total of 16 children that we will be serving. So we're excited about that. And our current organization, if we were fully staffed, we'd have 55 total employees. And as you can see there, there's the breakdown of our various positions. Currently, we do have 3 vacancies in the patrol division. We have 1 vacancy in the jail with our police services officers, and we have 1.5 vacancies in the support side of the house. The police department staffing levels, I think I might have to throw a pie chart or a graph like Chief Hubbard did next year. But as you can see, always like to do a 10-year comparison. 2009, we did have 49 employees, 36 officers, just over 25,000 service requests for that year. And then 10 years later, we have 50, well, if we were fully staffed, we would have 55 employees. We do have 2 more officers than we did 10 years ago. But as you can see, the calls for service have really increased substantially, 33% increase there. And while the arrests are very comparable, I'm not surprised at all to see the citations be significantly reduced. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Number one, our search and seizure laws have really changed a lot from 2009 to 2019. So back in 2009, when you arrested someone, you could search that vehicle. Now there are only exceptions as when you can search that vehicle that has to tie to a specific crime. But more importantly, our officers are so busy that it really has reduced down the opportunity to be self-initiated. And that, in other words, have time to make traffic stops, to do building checks, to put more emphasis on drug houses. And it just is exacerbated when staffing is not to the full level. Next graph is the criminal division. This is patrol and detectives. And if we had our full complement, we'd have 2 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, 3 detectives, and 21 officers. For the patrol side of the house, there are 2 patrol lieutenants. We should have 5 sergeants, 21 officers. And then, of course, the calls for service is at 33,000 plus. That's an average about 93 service requests per day. And again, the tickets issued, written reports, arrests made, and then 906 reported collisions for the year. 2019, the detective unit, that's led by 1 detective sergeant and 3 detectives. They handled 670 felony cases. And so this is nothing to do with our local courts. This is all those cases typically would go through Superior Court in Montesano. And those are, anywhere from homicides and robberies to the burglaries, sex offenses, and so on. They will assist at times with some of the misdemeanor investigations. They do assist on occasion with major criminal investigations with other agencies. They do handle all of our background investigations for new hire applicants. We do have 1 detective that is also assigned as the gang-related liaison, and he does work with other investigators throughout the county. On average, we monitor about 100 registered sex offenders citywide, and then in 2019, we did have 45 cell phone extractions, usually through the use of a search warrant using our various mobile data investigation tools. On the correction side of the house, we do have currently 6 PSOs with the 1 vacancy. We are a 24/7 care and custody service, and we have an estimated daily population of 11. I will tell you, typically we try to get down to single digits before a weekend, particularly before a holiday weekend, but it's not uncommon for us, particularly in the summer months, that we will get up into the upper teens as far as population. And we did transition, and as I mentioned earlier, very thankful for the council to allow us to move forward with the PSO model, and which there was a variety of things that occurred with that. We updated our training program. We have sent 2 PSOs to FTO school, and now they are actually the trainers rather than taking police officers off the street. Support services side of the house, we have 5 PSOs, we have 1 vacancy, but we have another retirement pending early 2021. We have our evidence technician and then the 1 part-time investigation secretary. However, that position, she left in August of 2021, and at this time, I do not plan on filling that, and have not put the funds for that in my budget for 2021. As you can see there, record section 2019 just shows you the volume of work that our staff deals with. And, you know, the pistol transfer application, see 511 in 2019. It is not uncommon during an election year that those numbers will elevate a bit, but I'll tell you that 727 through the October of this year alone, that's a pretty significant number. It's not quite sure what we're going to end up with at the end of the year, but anyway, my main point with this is just to show the volume of work that our support staff does, and then on the right side is what our evidence technician deals with. So I think just 2 more slides left. Budget highlights for the Aberdeen Police Department. The first one there, I think it's important to hit on it. I didn't do this last year, and I had usually done this at the county, but I just want to show the appreciation to our citizens for what they do to support public safety. As you can see there, our community approved the public safety sales tax back in 2016. At that time, we did have 38 commissioned police officers. You know, while the hope was for the staffing level to increase to 40, the city was able to increase staffing level by 1 police officer in 2019. That year, the city received over $500,000 from public safety sales tax. And then through October of this year, city has received $434,000+. So this funding source obviously assists the department in maintaining our current staffing levels. And again, I can't thank the community enough. And I think this is just important to show that this is a continual yearly financial support to public safety. The next bullet there, patrol officer staffing, that's the bars number. In 2020, the police department lost the use of the school resource officer. For obvious reasons, the Aberdeen School District discontinued the funding for that position. This is the one that falls under, and you may see the Department of Justice grant that actually ended a couple of years ago. However, we continued to funnel the funding for this position through that, and the school district would just reimburse us for that position. So it was a great partnership. I know the school district has a desire to have this partnership again in the future at some point, but unfortunately, that's a position that we lost that were able to utilize in the summer months. While that school resource officer was available to us. But with that position down, and then 3 vacant police officer positions, and then of course a new hires in the academy, but near graduation, it does affect our self-initiated activity, and in this case, our PROACT unit. The PROACT unit is what we really would focus on dealing with illegal drug activity within the city. Drugs are the leading cause of criminal activity, and it's not specific to this city. So maintaining adequate staffing levels will be essential in order to consistently be able to utilize our PROACT team, and then focus on the drug houses. And then the next bullet there, building repairs and maintenance. As Chief Hubbard made mention, we are very excited about the recent RFQ moving forward with the first steps in replacing these aging buildings. And then I believe my last slide here, just a few other highlights with respect to the budget. I do have 1 new patrol vehicle being requested at a total approximate cost of about $55,000 fully equipped. some of the council members may remember last year we had 2 in the budget. We froze one position or one vehicle. We did move forward with the purchase of that new vehicle, which we are just about to get. We somewhat got lucky, if you will. One of our older vehicles was totaled, and we were able to replace that vehicle. So it really did work out. However, we are on track to utilize about 1.5 vehicles per year. So we really should try to stay on purchasing 2 vehicles one year, 1 vehicle in the next, 2 vehicles in the next year. And I think that's the best way to manage that. And then there is a $10,000 that I had budgeted for a newer animal control vehicle. We plan on converting the current white colored animal control pickup into department use because the pickup that we currently use is on its last leg. That animal control vehicle, however, we also plan on using for a second VIP's patrol vehicle as well, not only to assist us with shopping cart retrieval throughout the city, but when COVID subsides and we can get our complement of VIPs back up and running, we'd like to have a patrol unit on this side of the river and then have another one over on south side. And so that is the plan with transferring that one vehicle into a VIP use. The second bullet there, corrections division, we saw an increase with meals for inmates, average 10 to 12%, and that's from the Department of Corrections is where we get our meals. And that accounted for approximately $5,000 for the year. And then additionally, mitigating the medical costs in the jail is always a challenge. Our physician's assistant, Patrick Paulson, has certainly helped reduce the medical costs. And I think it was last year where we really should have been paying the city of Aberdeen through the fire department when they're transporting individuals from the jail to the hospital. We had not been charged for that, and we should have been charged for that. And I believe last year was, and Chief Hubbard could correct me if I'm wrong, but so there's a bit of an added cost for that as well. But I think by and large, we do a pretty good job at mitigating that. We're thankful that Judge Solon also is very assists us when she can with when we can release individuals to go get the medical treatment they need and perhaps schedule that person to come back at a later time. And then the last bullet I have, training. This is an area that had been severely underfunded over the years. I will tell you the last 2 years, the council was very supportive of our increase in our training budget. As you can imagine though, for 2020, we spent nowhere near that amount. So that certainly was a savings. However, I have tried to maintain that same level, budget line item level for the various departments within my department for training, because there's just some things that we have to do in person and we can't do it remotely. And I believe that was my last slide there. So any questions?
Council members?
I had one I know about law enforcement only what I've seen on television. And so I want to ask you what a cell phone extraction was.
Okay, so yeah, there's actually 2 different programs, and we have 2 different programs, 2 different companies that supply this because of the different types of phones that we utilize. And so it is an ability, and mind you, pretty much all the time it is via a search warrant by a judge that says, yes, we have probable cause to allow you to search that phone. And the reality of it is almost everybody has a phone, and there may be individuals that perhaps they don't even have a place to live, but by and large, they may have a cell phone. And people communicate that way, whether it's drug deals, whether it's homicides that occur, individuals often will have cell phones. And so there's technology out there that now that will allow us, I'm trying to be, not give out all the secrets, if you will, but there's just a lot of information that we can get via a search warrant from cell phones. And it can, and the sky's the limit, really, if you think about what type of benefit that could have for a criminal investigation.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I had no idea. That's interesting.
Chief Shoemate, could you tell me how many officers are on patrol at any one time, given your shifts?
Well, we don't have minimum staffing per se, but we will normally have a sergeant. If it's the busier times of the shifts, we will have at least a sergeant and 3 officers. And sometimes that can go up. During the daytimes, we'll usually have lieutenants available. And as some of the council members that have been around a bit, we've gone through some reorganization and really trying to move our lieutenants back to being patrol lieutenants and being able to be out there and assist the patrol with handling calls and backing up patrol officers and not having them handle so much of the administrative load. And so, and we've been making strides in that avenue. So we're pretty happy about that.
Thank you.
I will tell you though, in September, when we had the 3 officers out because of the officer involved shooting, and we had 2 additional officers out because of medical matters, and then we had 1 officer in the academy and 3 vacancies, we actually had detectives out handling calls on some of those days. So it can be very challenging when your staffing gets that low.
Mm-hmm.
Any other council members?
So Chief, by the end of say February, are we hoping to be at about 40 officers again?
You know, so, and you'll see that in my notes, while obviously I put in the budget for full staffing, didn't add any additional bodies, but at full staffing, and that budget is as if it was January 1. We are in background right now with 1. And that's a very extensive process. Next week is the polygraph for this young man. And then after Thanksgiving is the psychological for this young man. And then we do have a second candidate that we're very high on that we are planning on getting started probably the second week of December, because part of this challenge is the detectives are the ones that do the background, but they also have their caseload. And so it's really trying to work all that in at the same time. So we can't really do multiple backgrounds at the same time. And then it's we can't have multiple officers in the training program at the same time because we only have so many field training officers. So we're spacing them out. Providing they pass everything, then that's when we would give them the offer them employment and then plan to get them off to the academy.
Okay.
Any other council members?
One more question. Can you give a rough percentage for how many of your officers actually live in Aberdeen?
Very low. I will tell you so that was part of my research. When I applied for this job, I believe the number of officers that lived within the city of Aberdeen was like down in the 20 percentile. And you know, it's one of those things, you know, years ago, there could be incentive for officers living within jurisdictions. And unfortunately, you'll see, and that's along the I-5 corridor now, where agencies are allowing officers take home vehicles as an incentive, and they are traveling miles and miles from where they live. And because it's all about supply and demand, to be frank. And I've shared this before, in public safety, fewer and fewer of our youth are pursuing positions in law enforcement. So here we stand, we have multiple openings, and yet I only have 5 people on my new hire entry level list, and 2 of those individuals are current employees in the jail. So, this is not special to Aberdeen. This is pretty much throughout the nation. It's a challenge. So, but the percentage is very low, back to what you're saying. And so I understand what you're saying. And I remember I had a conversation with Council President Shaw about the deputy chief position and perhaps trying to make that position live within the city. And that would have been, I would be surprised if I would have got anybody to apply for it.
If you were to broaden that question to countywide, what would that do to the percentages?
We have a lot of staff that live East County, Montesano to McCleary. A lot of staff, including myself. Fortunately, I didn't have to relocate. I graduated from Montesano. I've been living in Montesano for 48 years, and it's a short 20-minute drive for me here. But so I would say within Grays Harbor County, we're at probably about 85%. We do have a few folks that live in Thurston County.
Thank you.
Any other council members? So I had one quick question, Chief. I was looking for clarification on the losing the school resource officer. So if school's not in session, did we lose that officer, or since they were a paid and sworn officer of the department, wouldn't they have just been assigned to one of the vacancies that you were funded for, or how does that
Well,
work?
I mean, lose from the standpoint of if we didn't lose that funding, then that was another body. But because we lost that funding, then I have to reduce. I mean, the city only funds 39 total. That was actually a 40th officer. So now we're back down to 39 total commission. If that
So,
makes
but
sense.
since you have 3 vacancies, you didn't lose the officer, right?
No, I didn't lose the officer.
Okay.
I lost a body.
You
Versus if I was
lost an FTE.
yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, again, the city didn't fund it. It was a great relationship because of course 9 months out of the year he was assigned to the schools, but then in our busy time of the year, the 3 months in the summer, we got use of that position. It was just a really good relationship, and I know the school has a desire when school gets back up and running, hoping that there are grants again available that we would be able to go down that road again.
Okay. So any other council members? Thank you, Chief Shoemate, very much. I think we all look forward to getting our hands on the PowerPoints and the some more finite detail about the dollar amounts attached to some of the proposals we saw tonight. And if everybody doesn't mind, I'm going to remind everybody that in less than 24 hours, we'll be seeing each other again at 6:30 tomorrow night. We'll be hearing from Community Development, Parks, and Public Works. And unless anyone has something else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thanks,
Thank you, everybody.
It's been a great.
Have a good night.
Good night.